gentlemen, the King Win Pro League 2015. We're currently on week 3, and with me, Admirable. We're just done casting an incredibly quick series between Hyped and Amaz. Hyped went 3-0 against Amaz, and that was probably one of the most convincing sweeps I've ever seen.
Oh, definitely so. I mean, Hype's just an absolutely excellent player, and just consistently staying on top of his own game. He's had some rough times here and there, but I mean, last match that was a blowout, man. You talk about 3-0s. That's one of the quickest ones I've seen in a long time.
Yeah, and we're gonna see Amaz again just play right now versus Orange. They faced off, as I mentioned earlier, again, at IEM Katowice, and they are gonna face off against each other in the King Win Pro League as well, and we're gonna see even more of Hyped later on in the last match versus Dog. So going into this next match, Amaz's lineup is pretty much the same as the one that we had against Hyped. He has Druid, Hunter, and Mage, which are, I would say, the 3 power classes. There are 3 classes that are able to dictate the tempo of a game. When they do get that decent early game, they can basically say where the game's going to go and when it's going to go. They're going to ask the questions and hope the opponents don't have the answers, essentially.
Or have the wrong answers. I think is really what they're looking for. And another story about this, though, is Amaz has actually got a little bit of a weakness in this matchup, and I think it's time to prepare for your opponent. He faced him in IEM, and he had to face Hype today, and I'm curious which one of those he prioritized, if he prioritized one at all, because his lineup, to me, kind of looks like just what he's been practicing a lot with. And so he just thinks that these are 3 strong decks that he's going to bring with him, not really tailored specifically to his opponents. It could be the case, but I don't think that it is, because you only have so much time to prepare. And like I said, these guys faced off in the finals of IEM, and Orange, he was the one who took that one, man. 13,000 is what he took home for that win, and that is a major win as far as Hearthstone is concerned. There's only a handful of people that have won 10,000 plus playing Hearthstone, and he's one of them.
Yeah, he's among the select few at the moment. He brought also a really unusual lineup to this specific game. He's bringing Mage, Rogue, and Warrior. Warrior is probably, I think Orange is the only player who has brought Warrior every single week consistently since the beginning of the King Win Pro League, because it's one of the classes that has been deemed somewhat weak because, outside of Rogue, they really don't have any stellar matchup. They tend to have a problem against mid-range Hunter. Mech Mage is not an insta-win, and Druid tends to be a weakness, and those 3 classes are essentially the 3 power classes of the moment.
Yeah, Warrior seems to be really his cup of tea, and something he brings with him to a lot of tournaments. Again, he had it at IEM, and we haven't seen a ton of Orange play. I've been following as closely as I can, but he's not playing at every single event. But he's certainly making an argument for himself lately. And again, like you said last week, having taken some interesting lines, but sometimes those lines are forced by what you're given from the deck, and sometimes you just have to try to get lucky because you just don't have anything else that you can really have going for you. And when you see players take strange lines and play in that vein, it makes a ton of sense in the world. So you can't be too harsh on people for taking lines like that, because sometimes they just see stuff that you don't see, and you really can't evaluate it till either you get their opinion or sort of post-game, or maybe something they perceived about the matchup. Like maybe the players have a history together that we're not aware of. All those things can be taken into account. And so, to say that he's made questionable plays, he definitely made some at IEM. But a lot of that could just be nerves too. It's really the first time he's been on a big stage, and the King Win Pro League, I think, is a pretty big deal. So,
I can relate.
To have nerves in the
I can totally relate.
I remember that round at WCA.
Oh man, that was like the worst case of how to just lose you understand Hearthstone, and all of a sudden you just drop it all, and then you just I don't even know.
Do you remember the one game where you had almost skipped your turn because you were thinking so deep into it, and then it was just you were like, oh my gosh, time.
There's a rope. Oh, what do I do? Basically life coach style, except worse, because I kept outthinking myself. That being said, I want to point out something about the last game. Hype versus Amaz. We're casting 6 matches today because last week Amaz could not attend, being a part of Team Archon. He was attending another event alongside Zixo and Firebat, I think. And so that was kind of the catch-up match that we had scheduled for last week that we postponed to this week. So that one's done. So we have 4 more matches going forward. And I have to say that I feel like Amaz's lineup, Druid, Hunter, and Mage, the power classes, Orange is gonna have a pretty tough time, I suspect. If let's assume he does win the first 2 games with Mage and Rogue, it all comes down to his Warrior, and that Warrior has depending on how it's tailored, obviously, that will also depend on the build that he's got. But generally speaking, the 3 classes that Amaz brought could really pose a problem for him.
Yeah, I think Rogue is also like one of those power classes, and against Amaz's lineup, I think it's going to function really well. But the Warrior does kind of scare me a little bit.
Yeah.
If he doesn't get a pretty exceptional draw versus Druid, a lot of times it can snowball out of control because the Druid can just have such a strong early pressure with stuff like Wild Growth or just like a really strong minion curve. And it's okay for Warrior, but they can keep the board under control. The problem is the life total. So they have to use weapons constantly to keep taking out minions, and when you do that, you're going to get kind of close to like the 15-ish range, unless you're been able to have some like really, really strong starts with Armor Smith and get a ton of armor built up.
Okay, we're getting There's there seems to be a mistake with the class lineup because we're being told that Amaz is going to be playing Priest, but apparently the lineups weren't up to date. So Amaz is not going to be bringing Druid, Hunter, Mage, I'm guessing, because if there's a Priest in there, it can't possibly be that. I mean, I'm going to go.
I wonder if Amaz, because again, this is in this league, you get to change your decks per your opponent. Your lineup that you choose is per opponent that you face, not per day that you had played. And again, because Amaz's match was scheduled for last week, it's effectively different days for him in terms of how the scheduling with these matches works. And so he's going to be playing a different mage. I'm sorry, a different list than he normally said. So his lineup is actually Druid, Hunter, Priest. And I'm curious if this Priest is in here because he wants revenge on Orange versus the IM thing. He's like, you know what? I'm going to beat
grudge.
That same lineup. the grudge. I love the grudges. And see how he's going to fight there. So maybe he did prepare. Maybe he just feels like Priest is going to be better versus Orange more often than not, because again, Orange very often is going to be bringing Warriors to lineup. He's pretty much done it throughout almost every single tournament I can think that he's played in. Yeah, it's just like something that he plays. He's very comfortable with it, and so that could be a factor. But I'm gonna stick to my more crazy story of that Amaz really, really wants revenge.
Okay, that sounds more rational. And also, we're being told that Orange is going to lead with Warrior, and I find that excessively interesting, knowing that the lineup that Amaz brought is exceptionally strong against it. But I think what Orange wants to do is seal the game with Warrior because it's Conquest. Win the first game and get out of there. Get the Warrior out of your list so you don't have to end up facing everything else, as your last deck. So he might even queue 3 times with Warrior, trying to get that one win that's going to allow him to switch to his other decks that may be more consistent against the lineup that Amaz brought.
Well, in order to queue Warrior 3 times, he's going to have to lose 2 games first.
Yeah, that's he might be trying to, when you bang your head against the wall with Warrior, just to get that one win. When you have an unfavorable matchup in the entire lineup in Conquest, you can't afford having your Warrior be the last deck, because you might just get a complete reverse sweep at that point, as has been seen before.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of true for all those decks out there, but I feel like, I don't know, I just don't feel like it doesn't happen too terribly often. We've been seeing it a lot lately, and I think a lot of it could just be variation, but a lot of it also could be the fact that people are targeting lineups really specifically. Like they're not in Last Hero Standing, you had to be able to counterpick your opponent in a lot of situations, and then you wanted, like, your goal was to win the first game and then try to snowball really hard on the counterpicks from there. But sort of with Conquest, there's a lot of different things to think about where lineup building is concerned, and a very popular strategy right now is to pick one very popular class that people are playing and have a deck and have 3 decks that actually just beat that one. So your opponent will very often beat you in 2 games and then get stuck on their 3rd deck because your lineup is tailored against that.
Yeah, that's exactly what you want to do. You want to be able to you want to target the lineup more so, the player more so than the specific decks. You won't be like 2 BGH against a handlock like you would in Last Hero Standing. It's going to be a lot more broad than this when you're deck building. And also, you also don't want to bring hyper-specific decks in a way, because if he doesn't run what you think he's going to be running, then you're going to be ending up with a completely dead lineup. Your lineup is just going to fall apart. So we're going to have to
targeting
see
predictability. Targeting predictability in Conquest is very different than targeting predictability in Last Hero Standing.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so as soon as these players are ready, man, we're getting underway. Amaz is looks like he's going to be leading with Priest first.
I'd like that, because Priest versus Warrior is a matchup I haven't seen in a while in tournaments, outside of the obvious recent. There's been a few, I guess, recently, but Priest just gone from tournaments.
Oh, yeah.
So you don't see it anymore. And Warrior's also very underrepresented. So as a result, the Warrior versus Priest is essentially non-existent.
Yeah, I mean, Priest is kind of just non-existent. We were talking about last match. Every class has a card that kind of makes it overpowered. And we're like, well, maybe not every class. Yeah. Vol'jin, I think, is like was, along with Trogzor, probably the most over-evaluated card in GVG. And I think that aside from Strifecrow, I don't really know anyone else who is preaching it being very good, and I thought it was like extremely average when I first saw it. I was like, oh, well, how much of a difference Boombots? No, Dr. Boom.
Okay, yeah, I thought it was blatant power creep, and I was afraid of it. Very afraid. It scared me.
I mean, a very like widely spread opinion is that Dr. Boom was like very average of a card, just because of its vulnerability to Big Game Hunter, its perceived vulnerability to it, and people weren't really considering circumstances where Dr. Boom got dropped and then just 2 Boombots were really kind of messing up the board a lot. But like, along with Trogzor, Vol'jin was like the most over-evaluated card. Like so many people thought that those 2 cards were really going to be standouts, and they're just not. Like, I can't even remember the last time I saw Trogzor make an impact, and Vol'jin is just kind of like, you're very not so good.
Yeah, I've
just
seen
kind of like it becomes a 6/4 so often, and like that.
That's right.
I feel like one of the reasons it's not very good right now is because something like Pilot Shredder is so good that people can't afford to play like these gigantic minions unless they have an exceptional amount of value. Something like Dr. Boom. So when you take that into account, it makes sense that Vol'jin frankly isn't very good because nobody's just playing gigantic minions. Not only that, but you also have Big Game Hunter too. So Big Game Hunter is also choking out where really big minions come into play. It's just it's like a double whammy.
Yeah, like a lot of the metagame is warped around the fact that there is a BGH. Dr. Boom gets away with it because he happens to spawn 2 extra things that are going to deal with the BGH and possibly even more of it. So, and if they don't have the BGHs, then you just insta win the game. So it tends to be the case that different, like when you have cards like BGH that warp the game in a very heavy manner, and so does Powder Shredder, you will end up with varying degrees of even new cards that look promising on paper. They end up just being underplayed as a result, and I feel like Trogzor falls exactly in that category. It's a good 7-drop, but it's not, unlike Lothab, it doesn't prevent spells, it discourages them, right? There's a huge difference in the ability that it has to answer spells. You're not going to protect yourself against a Force of Nature Savage Roar with a Trogzor.
Yeah. Usually people just have minions on the board to fight him anyway, stuff like Powder Trigger. Or maybe the 4/4 Millhouse Mana Storm it spawns.
Yeah, because logic,
Yeah, players are finally ready, though, so we're going to get in the game as quickly as we can. We haven't just been talking because we like hearing ourselves. It's because we're waiting for these players to get ready. So you want me to shut up, but sorry, I'm not going to until they actually get into a game, and even then I'm not going to shut up quite as much. But you will get to see them play in the meantime, so that's always a good thing. So waiting for this game to get loaded up again, and as soon as we do, we'll jump into game 1. Man, Priest versus one of the things I've always been afraid about from the Warriors' perspective is getting something like Ragnaros Thoughtstolen.
Well, it's the way Priest wins. In those Thougsteal is essentially, it's a good card, but it shines in control mirrors. It's where Priest just wins games. They take one legendary that's an extra threat they get, and if they run, one mind control, or if they get an extra threat from Sylvanas, then all of a sudden they just take the game from there just because they get those extra threats for free, essentially. It's like Arcane Intellect, your opponent's deck. It's crazy. It's
Arcane Intellect, your opponent's. What if it actually drew them out of the deck?
Initially, a lot of people thought that's what it did when it was revealed in Alpha. A lot of people thought, "What? This is broken. What? I can't play those cards now." And then it got announced that Mind Vision was effectively that in Alpha. It was 6 mana, steal a card from your opponent's hand.
Oh, that'd be so cool. I wish it was that.
It was unplayable though at that point, and then they made it 4 mana, and then it was OP, and then they made it 1 mana, copy a card.
Yep. Yeah. So game 1 underway here. We see Frothing Berserker in the hand right away, and this is sort of a. This is something that Zolay really started to popularize lately. He did pretty well at ESL for himself, and I have played that quite a bit, and sometimes he gets really frothy.
Really frothy?
Yeah, like 22 power frothy.
That sounds frothy.
When you couple that guy with Deathspite,
it's actually pretty insane.
Actually, this is something that I used to do. Via suggestion of one of my friends is like when you first started playing a new season, this is back when it would start you back at 25 instead of giving you the bonus stars for having a higher placement for the previous season. From like 25 to 5, we would just try to kill people by making the biggest Frothing Berserkers we possibly can.
Okay.
And it would make that grind so much more fun because you're trying to kill people with 20 power Frothing Berserkers.
You're playing around one specific card to win the game, so.
Oh yeah, it was a blast. If you haven't made a 20 power Frothing Berserker, you're missing out. You are not playing Hearthstone.
Yeah, you haven't played the Frothing Berserker if it's never been above 20. That's for sure. it must have happened at least once in your Frothing life. So, this is a really weird position though. If I look at Orange's hand, like he's got a decent hand, but Amaza's board presence is. I mean, the double Dark Cultist start. There's no weapon in Orange's hand, and those are the most important cards in this matchup. You want to get the value from weapons as soon as possible.
Yeah, definitely is an important one, but neither of these minions are directly challenged by Dark Cultists, so a lot of board tension being built very early. And Amaz looks like has initiated the race now.
I mean, what does Orange do here? This is so weird. I mean, you can kill both minions. You use, you attack with the Armor Smith into one of them, then you trade into the other cultist, and you silence the buffed up one. I guess.
it looks like a silence is in order.
Yeah.
There's not a strong play available to him otherwise, and I don't think he's just gonna go face, because he can get a pretty favorable trade-off, I would say.
Yeah, you can get some. You can get a board established and deny your opponent's ability to really snowball out of control.
I'm really in the tank here, though. What's really important is to attack the correct Dark Cultist.
Actually, you could use. Yeah, you could actually use. Oh no, you couldn't. I was gonna say Shield Slam, but you're not gonna have.
No, I mean he could also. I mean, this is the other play he's thinking about. Is he's attacking? If he attacks the same.
And then it's gonna be Spell Break.
Yeah, he could attack the 3/3/1 and then do it. Like he could have attacked the 3/3 Frothing. I'm sorry, the 4-power Frothing Berserker into No, the 3/3. No, he's still only at 4 mana. I'm forgetting the buff. Yeah. Ignore what I just said. He's gonna use silence instead.
Yeah, that was the buff, bro. The buff was the issue really in this position, and now Amaz gets a pretty sweet Shadow Madness, the Armor Smith. Gonna be able to trade everything away, get himself 2 armor in case he thought steals that famed Shield Slam.
Yep. But the problem with this one is that he yields initiative to his opponent.
Yep.
So this is Orange's turn to really, really seize the board and start locking things up. And I'm gonna guess that's gonna be Loatheb. He just wants something on board to make sure it fights against Sludge Belcher really well.
It's the only card that really does it amazingly well on curve, essentially. I mean, Powder Shredder gets stopped completely dead by the Belcher, and then...
Stranglethorn Tiger does a pretty decent job.
Wow.
Can't even attack it. Can't even attack it.
You're right, you're right. You can't, like, Shadow Word Death to stall and buy some time.
I love Stranglethorn Tiger. So kind of like a Sludge Belcher. I mean, he gets down Zombie Chow and Taz Dingo this turn. That's like, I mean, if that was a Goldshire Footman, this would have been a Sludge Belcher he just played.
True. I mean, I like the addition of Sen'jin back in the metagame because of the fact that we see so many Paladin Shredders. I mean, Sen'jin is essentially the one card that deals with it well.
Look at that. He's even getting the 5 damage off Zombie Chow because he's got the Arcanine Soul Priest in play.
There's a Bomb Logger. Do you just Shield Maid and Shield Slam? I mean, I think that's a pretty solid board. Oh my goodness, it's gonna be pretty good. I'm happy to see Bomb Logger getting some play finally in Constructed recently. I mean, it's a card that just, when I saw it, I was thinking to myself, oh, this is amazing. You know, Miracle Rogue is gonna die, and then the Gadgetzan nerf was announced, and it wasn't necessary. So I thought Bomb Logger would be relegated to the unused cards pool.
But, well, you were right. I mean, Miracle Rogue kind of died out. Your prediction was correct.
It just feels weird
for the wrong reason.
Yeah.
I think feels weird. Spare Parts seemed, I think, a little bit scary. Plus, Gadgetzan Auctioneer, and he's just way too good. At 6 mana, he's still, like, I think he's in the spot where they want him to be, where he's still played and you can still build around him, but he's not just dictating how every single deck gets built.
Alright, so Orange here is thinking, do I draw out my Sylvanas? Because, I mean, Amaz can't even kill his immediately, and it's a big risk if he decides to play his. A huge risk, in fact.
So he's just gonna go for damage here, and I can't blame him.
Oh, I
know
like how
it.
tempting this feels.
I like it. I think you just go for it, man. You just dealt 8 points of damage to your opponent. You have 13 more sitting on board. You're gonna have 11 after he attacks. Amaz is gonna have something really good. And oh my gosh,
Shadow Madness Recombobulator is coming out.
Oh my gosh, that Recombobulator just destroyed the game. Orange
instantly.
Oh my gosh.
His face. Oh wow, that belongs in a museum.
Yeah, that's not the time he wants Harrison to be on board. I mean, you think he's happy with it, but definitely not what he wanted. Oh my gosh, the Recombobulator draw was just disgusting. You know, he still had a good Shadow Madness play.
Yeah.
By, taking Sludge off the board, getting himself a 1/2, and then also stealing his opponent's Sylvanas. Like, that was basically just going to happen every time that he saw Shadow Madness. But he'd already seen a Shadow Madness. So he's got to feel comfortable playing against the second one, right?
Yeah, he's not really worried about playing into it. And I wouldn't even be. I don't fault him for the play that he made, but that was pretty crazy. And Sylvanas gets hit.
This is
Oh.
so bad for Orange. I just don't think that there's a recovery turn after that happens. I mean, your opponent blew up your board and stole your Sylvanas.
I have
And
pretty
got a
good
5-4
muscle
on the
memory
deal.
in this position. The best play is escape concede in exactly 0.1 second before
Save
the opponent
everyone's
sees. Yeah.
save everyone some time and go on to the next game.
Yep.
Wow,
And that's exactly what it's going to do. Not going to go through the motions because, again, you know, Priest versus Warrior is a matchup that can go either way. It's been like this forever. It tends to come down to the card itself. But when the Warrior doesn't have card draw and he's just lost his Sylvanas to the opponent's Sylvanas, how exactly is he supposed to catch up from there? I really don't think there was a way for Orange.
I don't think it's intended for the game to have a function where you can catch back up after your opponent
Yeah.
makes a big swing, as he did in that one. But Amaz, you know, going back to his master class and really showing his stuff there. That build, I have never personally Shadow Madness something and recombobulated it because I just don't play
Really?
Priest. I just
Oh.
don't play Priest. It's just really
Okay.
not for me. But watching it happen really makes me want to play Priest.
Yeah, of course it does, right? It's one of the best possible scenarios. When Recombobulator was announced, it was everybody was thinking about Shriekmeister and Recombobulator is the craziest thing. And I really like the combination of cards.
That has got to be the best possible answer to Sludge Belcher.
Yeah,
The
it
Shadow
is.
Madness Recombobulator. And it's available on turn 6. Maybe I'm missing something here. I've been struggling for the last ever since Sludge Belcher came out. You know, I play a lot of aggressive decks. Sludge Belcher is something I've struggled a lot against. But I think maybe the solution is just switch classes. That was
Yeah, you just
so
go
great.
Priest. Easy life. Yeah. So that means the Priest from Amaz's lineup is now out of the way, which is going to mean that Orange's Mage the Rogue from Orange is going to have, you know, one of the free wins, quote unquote, that Rogue would be able to get is now out of the way. So, you know, the Warrior's going to have to win another game versus one of the other classes from Amaz. And Amaz is going to be going with Druid, where Orange will be picking his Mage. And I think that is a good switch from Orange to be going against the Druid here.
Yeah, so it's pretty rare that I think that people queue up a different deck when they lost with, but I think it's so important for Orange to do it here because if Amaz chose this Druid, he was really going to be looking bad if Amaz got a decent draw with this. Game 2 is going to be ready as soon as these players are, and this feels like almost like a must-win for Orange. I mean, going down 0-2 is just so tough.
Yeah, especially since your Warrior's still got a lot of problems ahead of him. I mean, if Orange wins this match, if Amaz wins this match, your Warrior will have to beat a mid-range Hunter eventually. Your 3 decks will have to beat a mid-range Hunter. And, I don't want to be pessimistic, but that is one tough challenge.
Well, we saw Hype do it. Maybe Orange can do
Yeah.
it too. You know, he's beaten Amaz before. Maybe he
True.
can beat him again. But we also don't know if this is a mid-range Hunter or not. I mean, it's again, players are allowed to
Right.
switch their decks for every single opponent that they play against. So
Right.
to see that build change, that would not be a surprise to me at this point. He's already changed classes. Is he going to change builds?
Yeah, I mean, if Amaz wins this and his last deck is, you know, Face Hunter, that could lose versus Mage, that could lose versus Warrior, but then there's a Rogue, and that is generally a really good matchup for Face Hunter. So we're going to see how things pan out in the future, but for the time being, Druid versus Mage, I would give the edge slightly in the Mage's favor, but it's so volatile because if a Wild Growth gets hit, then everything changes.
Just throws all that dynamic out the window.
Yeah, everything's just thrown out the window.
Yeah, it is Mech Mage too. So I'm curious. You know, Hyped. It didn't. I'm sorry. Who was it that looked like wasn't playing Mirror Entity? 6-0.
Zixo, yes.
6-0 wasn't playing Mirror Entity's deck. I'm curious if Orange is going to be going that same way. With Mana Worm, it looks to me like it's going to go that same way. I'd venture to say to fit in something like Mana Worm and the spells to go with it, you probably really the only reasonable cut in the deck would be Mad Scientist and Mirror Entity.
A lot of people cut Cogmasters, put in Mana Worms because they have more health, and then they end up putting sometimes a Kirintor Mage to compensate for they'll play, one counter spell, 2 more entities, and oh wow, double Innervate here in Amaz's hand.
Oh my
Turn
gosh.
3 Ancient of Lore. After
that's-
Wrathing, oh goodness.
That's a pretty tough one to beat. Both 7 drops in Orange's deck, or what I assume is both 7 drops, are already in his hand. Oh, this is looking so brutal. He can coin out the Annoyatron here, but then he doesn't have a turn 3 play. And so I would venture to say he's going to hang on to this and hope that he draws something on curve in the next couple turns to make sure he can get this done. But is there another play other than charge out this? I'm sorry, other than play this Ancient. Listen to me, I'm wanting to charge out Druid of the Claw instead of play this Ancient Allure on turn 3. It just gives you so much gas.
Yeah, the thing is, your innervates are so important to create huge tempo swings in the mid-late, right? Like on turn 6
Well,
or so, if you can get it done. But this is a 5-5. The problem is your opponent kept the coin, so if he coins out a Fireball, and you don't have a 4-drop, you're gonna be in a world of hurt.
yeah, but the only way to really get a 4-drop with a hand like this is to either save your innervates or to try to draw one. And I think I would tend to try to draw one. I mean, he's basically just replacing his innervates here.
And he's getting the Shade of Nax Zombie Chow for turn 4, so the curve is maintained, if not improved.
And I think Orange is gonna really, really want some lucky rolls here. Oh gosh, I think he's gotta go. Even if you miss it, you still have a 5-4 on board to contest. Wow, he's gonna deviate.
This is such a dangerous play if you play Blast Mage. In many ways, the only reason it's dangerous is if he has a swipe, then you're locked out of a board for a little while. I mean, you have to play on curve, and he gets somewhat of initiative. But I mean, this is not terrible for Amaz either. Both these players, yeah. I mean, Dr. Boom could get coined out 6 and then 7 or an Archmage or the other way around. Well, it's probably going to be Boom first.
It's always Boom first. Save his Wrath and just develop his board. I don't mind this. I mean, I don't think Amaz really expects Blast Mage in this position. Your opponent had such a good turn to play it last turn, I think.
It wasn't horrible, but... Well, I think you might want
to wisely setting up the Zombie Chow to die to 1 missile, so it can't absorb more. It's going to increase his chance to kill Shade. So super important there. Oh, these rolls are so important. Oh, just
that's
one.
That's not bad though.
It's not bad.
Is not bad. You got to kill here on that 5-2 if you want it. That's a good kill to take. I mean, you've got a pretty big board, and unless Amaz finds a swipe off the top, this board is going to be dangerous.
Yeah, those 2 1s are really doing a number right now, because if he wants to kill them, he's going to throw off his entire curve. He's going to have to unveil his Shade, which is going to get picked off by a hero power. And he thinks that might throw off the curve, but Orange's curve is already way thrown off. I mean, this is basically Orange has thrown everything into this turn. So unless he starts really picking up some cards, he's going to feel a heavy disruption. But I got to feel like with the way that this game has panned out, that he's going to be using Wrath and hero power here. That's just what I think.
I like the Shredder because it trades directly with the Blast Mage, but
yeah, I think Shredder's good. I think Shredder is actually his second best option, and it might be his best option too. Well, I don't really like Sludge Belcher because this is just absorbing 2-1s and it's absorbing a hit from the Goblin Blast Mage, which is setting up to die. So there, pluses and minuses.
Yeah, you're gonna get Wrath card draw on the Goblin Blast Mage.
I think he's gonna use his hero power to clear off the first section of the body, and then use the Blast Mage to a. No, he's not going to do that. He's actually just going to kill his Shade instead. So, I was wrong again.
Yeah, I would have thought.
I'm just wrong on all accounts.
Well, that's the thing. When there are so many lines of play, you pick the one you think is best, and that armor plating actually puts.
I mean, he's going to use it on the.
Yeah,
he's not. No. I was like, he's not going to put it on the Blast Mage. He's got Titanitis and a coin in his hand.
There's no swipe coming up anyway. He's aware of that. So Wrath for card draw on that 5-1, and then probably negate the Mech Warper.
Still, I think he's looking for a swipe.
Yeah, he ought to be, and now he plays the Paladin Shredder.
I really like Shredder on 5. I think that would have done an excellent job. He would have taken some damage.
Wow.
Oh my gosh!
No, you have to coin Boom. You have to coin Boom, right?
Well, it's not green with a border around it yet, so your macro doesn't work here.
Right, but we could add a setup there where it says if coin on 6, then coin, then if green on Boom.
If turn equals 6, if coin in hand equals true. Then execute, play equals coin, play equals Dr. Boom.
Yeah, that seems like a really acceptable macro. I mean, I'd play Hearthstone like that. I could probably do AI right now. I feel like a genius.
You get banned for botting then. Wow, 1 tick off. So close.
Well,
but he's got the hero power to short it up.
I don't know if that was an intended pun, but that was a really nice one. Banned for botting. Whatever.
Works, right? Yeah, people who play Dr. Boom should get banned. I agree.
Yeah.
I agree with you, Noxious. That is an excellent suggestion.
I agree.
Amaz draws Savage Roar, and Orange is nowhere near the 14 life point. This is brutal. I don't see him. With the way that Orange's hand started, this was looking like it was going to be a rough game, but both his Goblin Blast Mages have pulled so much weight that he's just got a mega advantage on the board. This is despite a turn 3 double Innervate Ancient Allure.
Yeah, and a lot of people have been complaining a bit about Blast Mage and the fact that it feels a little overtuned, but truth is, if you want an aggro deck in your metagame at any point, you need to have cards like these sometimes that are slightly above curve, but not completely game-breaking in the way that Undertaker are, because you have time to answer the Blast Mage before it comes out. So there are...
Charging here helps avoid when Fireball will just outright kill you, but he's going to have to deal with more than one Fireball.
Yep. This is going to be an escape concede, a muscle memory moment here for Amaz, I think.
Aha!
Aha! You require my assistant? No, there's no way he can win this. Unless he goes for... Force. Whoa, Black Knight, that's a dead card.
I think you should slam that Black Knight on the board and let Orange know he's got it and then concede the game. They're really smart to hide it there. But, you know, that was just common sense at that point. He has no way to deal with the Archmage, and he knows there's 2 Fireballs in hand. So, that game... That is the example, I think, of why Mage beats Druid, is because even when Druid has good starts, Mage minions are just so powerful enough that when you couple them with Goblin Blast Mage, they can really fight almost anything.
Yeah, their bodies are big enough that the Druid can't remove them easily. You know, in the way that Face Hunter might be swipeable, Mech Mage is not. It's really tough to get those perfect swipes sometimes. You have to set it up, and you have to have the swipe. You have to get the early ramp as well, because otherwise you won't compete with a Mech Warper. You need to find those early cards. So that's going to equalize the series between both players, which means Orange has to, you know, go to his Rogue or his Warrior at this point, because his Mage is out of the way. So Amaz's Druid Hunter versus Orange's Rogue Warrior, I feel like you have to try again with Warrior, if only to get one of those 2 decks out of the way.
Well, it really is a matter, I think, of which matchup you'd rather play against, and then I think you would queue up the deck that you would rather lose with if you had to pick one of your decks to lose. So if you just absolutely had to pick a deck to lose in Orange's position, which one would you pick?
I'd probably try to get the Warrior out of my lineup, right? Because it's Conquest, so if the moment I win with that deck, I'm safe because my Warrior is weak to both of the decks. But Orange is going to go with Rogue, and Amaz is going to go with Hunter. And if this is Face Hunter, we're about to witness some serious Valeera punishment. That's gonna really hurt.
I really agree with you on your Warrior thing, because I think he doesn't really want to play Warrior versus Druid. And even though I think Frothing Berserker can help you compete and keep the tempo throughout the stage of the game so you don't take too much damage, it still feels like it's favorable to Druid for me, just because of, again, you're having to use your weapons to kill minions, and if they get you close enough to a low life total, they can easily lethal you with Force Nature and Savage Roar.
Yeah.
So when he plays Warrior here, he actually has 2 different decks he can play against, but if he wins with Rogue, he has to play against the possibility of 2 different decks, but Amaz gets to choose what order they go in.
Yep.
And then I feel like it's better for like your mentality's sake. Like, I don't want to be going into game 5. I want to be going into game 4 with match point, not game 5 with match point.
Yeah, so I can understand why maybe Rogue, if it wins against Hunter, if this is Face Hunter, and if we see it being Face Hunter, this is going to be really problematic for the Rogue. Mid-range Hunter, on the other hand, I feel Rogue has a pretty good chance in that matchup, because sapping a high main is essentially, you know, if you've got anything on the board and you sap a high main, you're going to be racing pretty far ahead for the following turns.
Yeah, Web Spinner's a really big indicator that he's probably playing the same deck.
Mid-range.
And this is just the opening hand he drew, right?
Like, yeah,
this wasn't a
looking
mulligan. He just drew Web Spinner, Mad Scientist, Eagle Hornbow.
Sounds fair. Sounds like a fair hand to me.
Fair. Well, true to the nature of how Amaz has been with Hunter so far, there's the first freezing trap, and I would venture to say there's about an 86% chance he draws the second one.
Yeah, I've calculated the odds are really in the 87.5, but you know, this is just arguing over small stuff.
So if we draw the freezing trap, what's our percent chance of survival? Can you give me a number crunch?
73.1, depending on whether or not the opponent plays Loatheb on curve at 1 turn afterwards.
Yeah, I came up with 33.33 repeating Char's percent chance.
So you didn't take into account the Kobold Geomancer, but that's fine. That's your call. you do what you want. Your metagame, my metagame. To each his own.
Someone like joining in the middle, it's like, what are they talking about?
Amaz math, obviously.
You guys are lucky that you were here before we started that conversation, so you know what we're talking about. Welcome to the club. You're one of us now.
Amaz is getting really good value out of that weapon, honestly. I mean, he's going to get a total of 3 charges off of it, unless Orange comes up with some Harrison Jones tech.
Or Keys and Mystic.
Yeah, and there's an Oasis Snapjaw from the Web Spinner.
You know, it's actually one of the better cards against Rogue in terms of like minions.
Stickiness. Yeah.
Because who wants to kill an Oasis Snapjaw? I've never met anyone who's like, sweet, Oasis Snapjaw, now I can use my backstab, eviscerate, and a charge of my dagger on it.
Yeah, it feels good, you know, because I'm preventing 2 damage.
And I'm only using 2 cards to do it.
Yeah, it's like you're killing a Doomsayer that will whittle away at your health over 25 turns.
Amaz is just going to let this... Wait, was that a freezing trap?
It is
was that a snake trap? We're 100% positive it's a freezing trap, so he doesn't want to give him the card. He would rather lose the freezing trap than let Rogue draw an extra card. I actually think that that's really smart right now because it's difficult to play a 4-mana 1/1 here. Like, he's so often going to be coining out something like Azure Drake or Loatheb, or even just playing Violet Teacher and then having some spells afterwards. This Blood Mage may just be stuck in his hand for just a very long time.
Yeah, it's the only time where you're really going to be happy to play it over an Azure Drake at this point is when you have absolutely no more Drakes left, first of all, and then you're going to have probably a prep for the Fan of Knives. So it's going to be, or for whatever spell it is you're trying to power here.
Yeah. Amaz has been trying to attack 3/3s, or rather keep 3/3s off the board by having the Eagle Horn bow ready. But this Azure Drake or Loatheb may really encourage the second freezing. I mean, obviously he's not going to freeze trap the Loatheb, but it really may encourage him to just play another freezing trap and try to continue to seize tempo from that, and then just use the bow as 12 to base damage. That's so much from one card.
How much do you mind actually freezing trapping Loatheb, right? You play your own Loatheb, and then he's locked out of spells, and then that goes back to his hand.
Well, he can't play Loatheb and freezing trap at the same time. That's really the biggest issue with it.
I wonder, though, what the follow-up plays are going to be for Amaz. He's got 2 lines of play that I do like. I have to say Loatheb here feels pretty good, but there's a good, I guess, argument to be made for Kill Command, but you kind of want to keep that for the face.
Yeah, definitely goes both ways. I don't mind Loatheb either. I can definitely see that coming out. The issue with that is how much damage can he really deal in terms of just absolute pressure, because I think the bigger thing that's happening right now is that both players are still really heavily fighting for the board. So Loatheb, oh wow, he's actually just going to take out the Azure Drake with bow and his turtle. That's really smart if you're going to play Loatheb. I wasn't even thinking about that. To me, I just saw bow and I was like, bow 3 charge, bow hit face, bow 9 damage.
Classical hunter, basically.
Yeah.
You went through the hunter tutorial, I can tell.
Chard no stupid.
Rexar no stupid. Right. We all believe you, Rexar.
Well, Savannah Hyman's no stupid either, and using his life total, using his life total as a resource right now, this is actually really smart stuff. Because if there's no sap, Orange is going to fall really well. If there's no sap, and this is what he was trying to avoid by freezing the Blood Mage, was keeping his opponent from getting deep into his deck and lowering the chances that he finds one of these.
But he is 1 mana off of doing what he really wants, which is, you know, sap, SI7, eviscerate to kill Loatheb. Yeah. But at this point, he has to play sap, eviscerate, dagger kill. But it's kind of horrible. I mean, I guess you could sap the Highmane, then play Earthen Ring, and then when the Loatheb attacks into it, possibly you
I mean, there's another bow charge too, so I don't think the Loatheb is really going to attack him. I mean, this is a tough turn because he's got to start being concerned with the amount of damage he's going to take.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
There's not much question, I think, about one of these minions dying this turn. It's just a matter of how he does it. And since he doesn't have another opportunity to play Blood Mage pretty much ever again, he's going to eat 6 damage from the Savannah Highmane. I think he is going to try to get Amaz to expend his bow charge on this Blood Mage so he can continue to try to find what he needs, because he doesn't have something like a preparation right now, so any little extra bit is going to help. Wow, Amaz is just going to use Unleash the Hounds.
Yeah, there's no Violet Teacher at this point of the game would be effectively useless in that it comes out and you're really not going to be too threatened. You got your bow dealing 9 damage, you got a Kill Command in hand. You're probably going to steal the game somewhat soon in this position.
It really makes all the sense in the world that he used Unleash the Hounds now, because I was like, why on earth would he Unleash the Hounds here? But what he wants to do is he wants to get rid of the Blood Mage.
Guaranteed.
Yes, so if he uses the Mad Scientist there instead of the Unleash, when he misses the Blood Mage, he can't actually kill it unless he attacks the Savannah Highmane into it, and that's what he was trying to avoid.
Yeah, you don't want to waste your last bow charge on it either. So it's either or, but you're going to be overkilling it by 1,000 million. So really, there's no really good reason to not use the Unleash in this position.
This is the big turn I think that he was looking for, though.
Yeah, this is the turn that Orange was trying to get. And the important thing about Rogue is the way they play is so interesting nowadays, because they generally tend to hoard cards, and they will unleash them in over about 3 turns at the very most. So Orange has accumulated a pretty nice hand. You know, he didn't even need sprint up until this point. He's drawn quite consistently, and he's got the Gadget's hand to follow up on the next turn. So he's thinking about what he could get, I guess. He's thinking about shiving for card draw, but
You know, I've made this Shiv a lot of times, and something that I really, really always regret about it is that I have one dagger charged, and like I usually draw something like deadly poison.
And then you should have just redaggered, right?
Yeah, it's not even. I don't even necessarily think it's you should have redaggered. It's that every time that this happens, I always draw a deadly poison, and I'm staring at it in my hand and going, God, why didn't I redagger?
How much mana is that going to cost me to set up? And I mean, this is not a bad Savannah Highmane. The problem is if your opponent actually has another sap, you tend to take about 10 damage straight up. And now you might be in a position where, well, I mean, I guess you Savannah Highmane Freezing Trap and see where things go from there. Or you could just go
Shiv. Well, he's all Shiv over Dagger Up again, so I think he's probably excluding something like Tinker Sharpsword Oil. So I think he's. I mean, I would tend to favor the hero power right now. He also hasn't seen Earthen Ring Farseer. So there might be something like an anti-heal bot, and it's just a matter of which one of these is going to deal more effective damage in the long run. So, well, there wasn't Tinker Sharpsword Oil, but there is now. But I don't think it's going to be the play this turn. It's just tough stuff. I mean, he's got to be worried. You can't even
justify Get It Sending. I think you have to Drake Eviscerate to kill that body, and then perhaps even to get a prep, and then you can Fan of Knives the hyenas off the board.
It's awfully ambitious. I think that Azure Drake probably is the play here, because I think you want to take out the first half of the Savannah Highmane. You have a minion on board to start attacking against what's happening, but again, there's just a trap on the other side of the board.
And that bow is watching you. Give me another charge, it says. If he finds a prep, though, that could be a crazy draw for him.
Sap could work too.
Ugh.
That's not a very solid one right now.
Well, you've got to do what you've got to do. Take that Highmane off the board before it hits the face. Again.
Oh gosh, this feels so painful.
You might even deadly. Right?
He's using Eviscerate to remove 2 damage from the board on turn 8.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There's lethal for Amaz next turn, actually. Yep, this is actually a lethal for Amaz.
Yeah, that's gonna do that one. Orange is gonna fall with this Rogue deck. I think Rogue is typically pretty favored in this matchup.
Yeah. You get a good sap. You just need to get those 3/3s out as soon as possible. But the bow that Amaz had and the 3 charges would have contested those 3/3s anyway.
Wisely holding on to his bow charges to make sure that his opponent doesn't be able to play or isn't able to play on curve as strong as it normally can, and he's now going to take a 2-1 lead. And he's got Druid versus Rogue and Warrior, and the Druid versus Warrior is really what he was hunting for.
Yeah, I think Orange is going to be sticking to his Rogue here, trying to get that Druid win, and then worst case scenario, he gets the maximum tiebreaker points at the very least. You don't want to queue your Warrior immediately into Druid. That's too risky. At least with Rogue, you can get those Blade Flurries early on a Shade of Nax. You know, if that doesn't spiral out of control, you stand to be able to win.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty good matchup for Rogue typically.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the same way versus the mid-range Hunter. It's like if you get a good turn, like a really big sap and get your board development, you put enough pressure on them that they can't just burst you out at the end of the game. But you have to get stuff rolling first. And against Hunter, you have to be looking at Eaglehorn Bow. So you have to have a way to fight against that. And when it's there, frankly, there just really isn't a good one. Like maybe something like Sabotage. But Sabotage is a pretty expensive card to play to target weapons because it destroys a random minion instead of a targeted one. But against Druid, they don't have the bow. Wrath is really their only answer to 3/3s, and they have to use an entire card to do it, and they can't invest that mana early on and then save it for later turns.
Yep.
So I definitely think it's better versus Druid than it is against Hunter, but still good versus both.
Yeah, I really do feel like Orange is going to be trying to maximize. I mean, in the previous weeks that we saw him play, he didn't seem to try to maximize those tiebreaker points. We saw him just stick to a deck that was really, unfavored against the entire lineup of the opponent, and he stuck to it completely, and then he basically didn't get any tiebreaker points, and as a result, what that means is that if they ever end up having the same score at the very end of the season, the Kinguin Pro League, he might not move on to the playoffs where another player could, and that's really problematic for that. You really want to maximize your chances of getting there.
Yep, tiebreaker points can definitely make the difference, or all the difference in the world. Not only that, but it's good for the information battle too. You want to know exactly what you're, or as much of what you can figure out that you're playing against as you can. So, game 4. Match point for Amaz is about to get underway. Orange is going to be playing Rogue, and Amaz is going to be playing Druid, of course, because it is his last deck that he has to win with. So again, I like queuing up the Rogue first. I think it's a good matchup for you. So you want to go in a good state of mind when you're heading into Game 5, and you want to get a little bit more information.
Yeah,
Maybe
as
you'll
much
see
as
something.
possible. Maybe you'll see something odd about that Druid deck. I mean, there was a Black Knight, I believe, earlier that didn't get revealed by Amaz. So if that
Right.
comes out, then Orange will have a little bit of an idea of what he's facing up.
Help him make decisions with his Sludge Belchers. Maybe.
Yeah,
His
the
first Sludge
Belchers,
Belcher. His
that's
first
about
Sludge
it.
Belcher got destroyed
Yeah.
by Shadow Mana Streak and Populate. And I think that Black Knight is not what he really wants to face either.
Well, Deadly Poison's pretty good against Acolytes of Pain. We'll see exactly what Druid gets. No Innervates would be a really big help for Orange. Well, it's a
Yeah,
bit
Innervate,
of a...
Innervate can really hurt, but it really comes down to whether or not Sap was drawn a lot of times.
Yeah.
And
Well,
we're doing a good job on calling him today. You know, this hand is really weak, but Blood Mage I think is one of those cards that I used to burn this a lot to draw cards, but Rogue I think has a little bit of time to find some stuff, especially when he has the Sap in hand. So to see him try to save it to get good use out of it, I think makes a lot more sense than just using it to pick up an extra card.
oh man, these cards aren't exactly what Orange wants to see for the time being. I mean, he's hoping his opponent skips the next turn at the very least.
Yeah, the Tinker's Oil is really going to change his mind about that.
Well, that prep needs to be kept for a sprint. I think Orange will be relieved if a sprint pops off the top. Especially since Amaz doesn't have a turn 3. I mean, he coined out the Shade, but... without a turn
Yeah.
3, he's just going to have to hero power down that Blood Mage.
Yeah, Amaz was really looking to Wrath something like an Earthen Ring Farseer or an SI7 agent this turn.
Yep.
Hero Power Blood Mage, though, I think you're pretty happy with that.
Well, now there's a Fan of Knives on Orange's
my
side. I think you
gosh.
just throw that out and try to
Yeah.
draw a card, get something a bit more relevant for now.
If you had drawn that with the Blood Mage, you could add Blood
Oh,
Mage.
that would have been
yeah,
sick.
Shade.
Goodbye, Shade.
Yeah, 2 Saps now. I mean, not a lot of action going on. I mean, this deck does need a mix of minions and spells.
Yeah.
And right
It
now,
tries to
it's
beat
just
the board
spells.
a lot more than... I mean, then again, Orange's version does contain the Auctioneers, so he's got to have made cuts somewhere in the minion roster. I'm not exactly sure where.
Is he playing the Auctioneer version? Do we know that for sure?
I saw the Auctioneer earlier, so maybe cut one sprint in favor of one Auctioneer at the very least. Well, there it is.
Wow. Yeah,
Hello.
like once again, we've been nailing him. I think it's time to go buy some lottery tickets.
Yep, I'm doing that tonight. I'm making about $17,000 from this cast, so no problems.
$17,000.
Yeah, that's a good deal for 6 hours of casting, am I right?
Man, that's good stuff, man. I don't know how you pulled that one off, but that would be amazing.
Alright, so the Rogue, what did she do? He prepped something, but I don't think he wanted to prep something. I think he dragged the wrong card out. He doesn't seem... Orange is facepalming right now.
Yeah, I don't really
He threw
understand.
Yeah, I think he threw the Gadgets and Auctioneer out. Basically,
he-
he wanted to play Sap, I'm pretty sure, and now he played Prep, and...
Was he just? I mean, he looks devastated. This preparation had to be accidental.
Yeah, it's not
think-
intentional, it's
Did
pretty obvious.
Did Auctioneer just register as 5 mana in his head? And he was like, oh, perfect.
No, he literally played Prep without even trying to play the Auctioneer.
That
Well, he's gonna try to go full face here and gonna sap the... Oh wow, that is very heads-on, and... You know what, I want to say that this might work.
no, that's what I mean. I'm really curious, like why he was so devastated by this play. Like,
Because it's not... You really want to play everything with Gadgetzan up, given the choice, but then again, this is a lot more aggressive. How do you seal the game, though? I mean, you need to top deck another Prep, right?
I mean, I guess so. I mean, it doesn't seem. I mean, it looked to me like he was trying to force his opponent to have something like a Wrath or a Swipe this turn and maybe throw off his tempo. Was what I was thinking, but this is obviously a gigantic misclick from him.
Well, he might sap now, I don't know. You sap the Shade and you pass the turn, and hope you get another Prep for that Gadgetzan.
I think you attack him and redagger. You got to kill him at this point. I mean, you're
Get a
committed to
better
this game plan.
Tinkers. Yeah, there's nothing else for him to do. He has to go full face at this point.
Yeah.
And
He's got
Wow.
8 more with the. He's got, you know, if his opponent doesn't have like a healer or a taunt, he's got 8 more with the Tinker Sharpshooter roll. He's got 4 with the Eviscerate. I mean, it's getting pretty close, honestly.
yeah, the Ancient of Lore has, 5 damage healing. If he doesn't kill him next turn, this is going to become really problem. That 5 health is excruciating to go through.
Yeah, I mean, but look at the bright side of things. You do have a chance to kill him.
Oh!
Well, he doesn't have any
That-
saps anymore.
That's an okay draw, right? I mean, you at least try prep Eviscerate and hope for Deadly Poison. That's
Do you
3
prep
card
Eviscerate
draws.
or do you prep Tinkers? I think you prep the Tinkers.
Into your Gage? I guess you have to, because you get just to get a dagger, but I just...
Oh, no, you cannot Eviscerate that! You've committed to the game plan!
He found the Deadly! What?
But he,
no way!
But he eviscerated the Shredder! Not
I know.
the face!
Oh, he can't kill that. But he's gonna draw cards! Oh my goodness. And now, wait, the problem is Amaz now cannot afford healing, because then the Gadgesan stays up and he loses the game.
That was what I thought his entire game plan was. This is why I don't understand why he was so devastated about it. Like, I thought this was what he was trying to do.
That wasn't it. No, he wanted to keep everything for the Gadgesan play, but he went all in on a play that he didn't want to make. And now the Drake gets popped out, and Maz doesn't heal up. And does this give Orange an opportunity to stabilize?
I mean, you could draw the other Deadly Poison, and that would be...
You just have to find Blade Flurry with that Azure Drake, and suddenly things don't look as bad all of a sudden. What is this top deck? Is it? No, it's not. That's not exactly what he was looking for. Ah. Man. Now that armor up. That armor is going to start stacking with the Armor Smith.
I don't think he anticipated Armor Smith.
Nobody does. Nobody expects.
Is that enough damage? That's 23 right now that Amaz has. He's actually just a couple. Yeah, he's just a couple mana off of killing him. Force Nature Savage or 23 damage possible in turn 8.
He's calculating. You can see it on his fingers.
Yep. He's gonna get the bad news that he has to kill stuff this turn.
Yeah.
And then play other stuff. But
unless you put your opponent on immediate clock, but then you're dead to
good flurry. That's actually a good point. I mean, he could just put him at 2 and hope that his opponent doesn't have the damage to kill him. But when your opponent just your opponent has a poison up and they didn't attack you, it certainly feels like they it certainly really feels like they may just be able to kill you. He's just gonna go for it though. He's got the Keeper in the Grove in hand, so I cannot blame him. Oh,
he's gonna start trading with stuff with that combo. Is he going face or trading? I think he's trading.
Wow. So he's gonna deny all the damage, just get in as much damage as he can.
And get a good Savage Warrior next turn, actually. That's a lethal play next turn. With Savage Warrior number 2.
Definitely was not accounting for the second Savage Warrior when I was looking at how this could go on. I mean, this is still just as threatening of a board position.
Do you think he plays 2 South Sea deckhands? Because that would be huge.
I don't think he does.
I doubt he does.
But I've seen people do it.
Okay.
I played some of it earlier this week. And it wasn't too shabby. I mean, second South Sea Deckhand. I mean, you have 2 Tinker Sharpsword Oils. Like, one of the best combos in the deck is South Sea Deckhand and Tinker Sharpsword Oil for 9 damage.
He needs to find Blade Flurry as soon as possible.
Well, he finds Eviscerate. And that's... Yeah. You know, it may be able to keep him alive for a turn.
Yeah, it will, actually. It's going to be able to kill the Drake.
And every single point that he puts into a minion, though, is one step further from being able to kill his opponent.
He needs to get 1 minion to stick, though. Just one. Like, if Amaz goes for Dr. Boom here and doesn't trade, and that Shredder lives, that Tinkers is going to be... You know, you just stop a Blade Flurry on the back of it.
I'm curious
but you can't because it's going to give armor. Oh my god.
I'm curious if he needs the boom. Like, at this point, you're so far ahead.
Double Keeper, right? You double Keeper, silenced, and trade.
Well, you definitely could do... There's so many different lines of play here that it's just... You know, what are you worried about? And I think when you can prevent yourself from ever dying, basically, that's probably one of your best bets. So, like, double Keeper, you know, pulls all the damage off the board, and there's almost no way that Orange can deal 20 damage from a board position like this.
Yeah, you're kind of becoming a warrior at this point, which is the biggest weakness of Rogue, which like, they just can't handle it. Well, that's gonna be.
He needs 6 more damage here. So like, if Amaz didn't have any way to gain life or deal damage, I mean, this would be a really.
Oh, that's gonna be game. Force of Nature will be top decked by Amaz here. The second combo does come around eventually, which is gonna give the complete sweep here for Amaz. Now, Orange must be feeling really bad about the play that I think he didn't want to make very early in the game. He seemed devastated by what happened. So.
Which I still don't think is that bad. I actually think his game plan was pretty decent despite that. The biggest difference is that once he decides to split the damage, it makes the commitment on the turn, on the previous turn, look and feel pretty bad. And that's why I think I would. That's why I would like to see him just go ahead and follow through with it, and he can just eviscerate face, hope that he draws some more damage, and that his opponent dies after that.
Yeah.
He prepped and he was just crushed by the fact that he had. I'm assuming he was trying to drag out the South Sea deckhand from his hand and then play the Tinker Sharp Sword Roll afterwards, and he had accidentally preparation. So then when he did that, he decided he was just going to go for it.
Yeah. I think what he wanted was really just to get that Shredder off the board as fast as, and that was really devastating for him on that turn, because if he'd gotten that Gadgetzan Auctioneer with prep, it's kind of the old Miracle cycle. If it sticks, then it, you know, you're going to be far ahead, and if they have to trade their Shade for it, then you're still kind of okay with it, because you don't have to wait for the Flurry. So kind of unfortunate for him. I will have to ask him what his game plan was for him to feel so devastated and fail fish on the stream.
I think that's the biggest reaction I've ever seen.
Yeah,
to
definitely.
Something like that, yeah. To in Hearthstone anyway.
Yeah, definitely. But either way, Amaz is going to go 3-1, so he lost his last game versus Hyped. You know, last week's match was postponed to today, so he's going to be able to at least, from his 0 to go to 1-2. Orange, however, losing another series in the K-Win Pro League, that's putting him on 0-3. Despite the win in IM Katowice, he's still, in this tournament so far, hasn't been able to, you know, get a second win against Amaz, essentially. That's kind of unfortunate for him.
Yeah, ties of a series in terms of the long term of Hearthstone, when you're going to face people again and again. 1-1. That's got to feel good for Amaz, but Orange, man, so brutal. But hey, you know, bright side of things, you got $13,000 from the Katowice win. I don't think that this match maybe is the biggest thing for him.
Yeah. So we'll be right back. We're going to take a short break, and after the break, we're going to be casting Kolento versus Life Coach. So two of the top players in the scene by quite a long shot, and that should be a really exciting lines of matches, and I really can't wait to see what Life Coach brought. Hopefully he's not going to be playing his handlock, because Kolento could abuse that and maybe get himself a really sick lineup against Life Coach, studying his opponent. So we'll be right back.